Good news, bus lovers, we have another one, hot on the heels of the AEC Routemaster, something that to non-bus people probably looks broadly familiar, but which is very, very different. This is a 1956 Daimler CVG6. The C stands for the chassis code, the V for victory. After the Second World War, the CV replaced the CW. And G, Gardner diesel engine, 6, the number of cylinders. It is a 6-cylinder diesel, much like the Routemaster. But behind that, because it's a Daimler with the lovely crinkly grille, we've got a pre-selector gearbox. So it's going to drive slightly like that Lanchester I drove recently. But it's a fascinating bus, it's a very interesting history. So we're going to have a chat with the owner and find out more about it. So this is David, who has owned this bus since 1990. What can you tell us about the history of this bus? What's its significance to you?
Well, I'm a Dukinfielder. I grew up travelling on these buses. This bus is 2 years younger than I am.
Wow.
So they were always around during my childhood.
Yeah.
And I worked in the industry for many years. And I always thought it was a bit silly owning a bus because they're big and heavy and expensive. And I said the only bus I would ever want to own would be a centre entrance SHMD Daimler, because I just loved them.
Yeah.
And this one came up for sale and I had to have it.
Brilliant. So SHMD is the Stalybridge, Hyde, Mossley and Dukinfield Transport Board and Electricity Company.
Transport and Electricity Board.
Yeah,
yes.
So they did electricity and the buses in that area at the time, and it sort of evolved. Eventually got swallowed up into passenger transport executives and all sorts. But
there were 4 very forward-looking towns at the time that they actually banded together to build themselves a power station, because they were all quite small towns and one of them alone couldn't have managed it.
Yeah, so they did that and did trams as well, and trams obviously evolved into fully fledged buses. So what is it you love about this one?
I think it's partly the fact that it's unusual, because there were only 6 of these built with this body design.
Yeah.
And so you'll never see another one.
No.
And as I say, I travelled on them regularly as a child, and they are an unusual design. And I love the pre-selector big gearbox. It's just such a nice thing to drive. So civilised. None of this. I learnt to drive with crash gearboxes where you're crunching.
No synchromesh. Yeah.
None of that stuff. With this, you just press the pedal, you time it right, you get a lovely smooth change, and it whispers away.
Yeah, I'm certainly looking forward to having a go in it. So what unusual features are there on this bus?
Well, where do we start?
I was going to say.
You've no power assistance for anything. So you're entirely reliant on driver's muscle to get the thing round corners.
I'm in for a workout.
Same with the pre-selector. Unlike London buses, which are for buses and have air-assisted pre-selectors, this has just a great big spring. So after you've driven one of these for about 8 hours, you find you're afflicted with what is known to the aficionados as Daimler knee, because eventually your leg will give up.
Yeah.
The bodywork is an unusual design in itself, because it's a sort of relic of a one general manager's fixation that centre entrances made for faster loading and unloading.
Okay, well, let's go and have a look.
Yeah.
So yeah, very unusual. No front entrance like a modern bus, no rear entrance like a Routemaster. We've got these doors smack bang in the middle of the bus. So what was the thinking there?
Well, they're power operated by the driver, so of course that relieves the conductor of having to watch for people falling off the bus.
Yeah.
But the idea was that because you've got passenger space fore and aft and the staircase right in front of you, you can get a free flow of passengers if they're at busy times. And remember, in those days, buses were busy.
Oh yeah.
You just have standing passengers. So you don't get this congestion that you would get at the bottom of the stairs with an open platform bus. And you also don't have the problem that nobody wants to stand behind the cab, because they then have to fight their way to the back of the bus to get off. But it does have some drawbacks, of course, with this layout.
Yeah.
One being that wherever the conductor is, he can't actually see very much about what's happening, because
would that be his perch?
That's his perch for the conductor.
Hold on.
And as you can't see what's happening at the back of the bus.
No.
You can't, although there is a mirror on the staircase, you can't use it from that position.
No, and it doesn't give a very good view.
No, not
Anyway,
at all, really.
yeah.
And by the time you get to the top of the stairs, you're at the back of the bus.
Yeah.
So it from that point of view, it wasn't brilliant. And also, because of this complex layout, the bus is quite heavy compared to a conventional open platform bus. It's
Right.
about another 500 or 600 weight heavier.
Blimey.
Plus, of course, it's only a 58-seater, whereas a 27-foot bus on this chassis, you could normally get 64 or 65 passengers on.
So it's quite wasteful for
So
space.
it is wasteful of space
Yeah,
as
yeah.
well.
Yeah, some lovely features, some lovely sort of the original tag, so the Northern Counties metal frame body.
Yes, and of course you've got your cleaner's light here, which only brings on about 3 lights and about 3 more upstairs, so that the cleaners can get round in the dark
Without flattening batteries.
without flattening the batteries. Yeah, I mean, another unusual feature of these was that half the fleet of buses was parked outside. And in order to make sure that they started on a winter's morning, they all were plugged into a ground lead, which operated a fan heater, which is located under the back seat upstairs. And you see the grill there in the ceiling.
Yeah.
Well, there's a fan heater there which blows warm air into the saloons, top and bottom, and there's an immersion heater in the bottom of the radiator. So that warmed,
Preheats the engine.
it preheated it, and the whole thing was wired up to a clock and a thermostat. So in the early hours of the morning, it would switch itself on, sniff the air, and if it was cold enough, it would turn on the preheating system. So that when the driver arrived, the engine was warm, the saloon was warm, and the bus could go straight into service.
Wow.
The only drawback was that more often than not, the driver would forget to unplug the connection.
Oh dear.
And the thing would then be ripped out of the side of the bus, and they'd have to do a lot of rewiring.
Yes, I suspect that happened more than once.
So the system, it didn't last all that long in the end, but it was a nice idea.
And when did this bus leave passenger carrying service?
It ran from 1956 through until 1972. So from 69, it was working for the Selneck Passenger Transport Executive, but they never repainted it into their orange and white. They obviously didn't think that it was going to last all that long, so they took the crest off and so on, but they just...
I was going to say, the arrival of rear-engine buses really moved the game on since this had been built.
Oh yeah. But, and in fact, SHMD had been buying rear-engine buses since the early 60s. They already had about 30 Daimler fleet lines by then. So these were very much amongst the older vehicles that Selneck inherited. But the problem at the time, of course, was that most of the new buses were then part of the Leyland empire. And Leyland's deliveries were pretty dilatory. And so they just had to keep the older stuff going as long as they could until they could get new vehicles delivered.
Blimey. Lovely. Well, we shall go for a drive. It's time to wake up the driver. So here we are in the cab, the single wiper there. I've got a little mirror so I can keep an eye on the conductor behind me, the controls for adjusting the destination blinds, the windscreen wiper here. Move that. We've even got screen wash fitted, because actually this bus remarkably hit a house and pretty much demolished it back in the day. And when they rebuilt the bus, one of the things they did was fit an actual windscreen washer. Prior to that, it had an opening windscreen, and a quirk of UK law is if you've got an opening windscreen, you don't need a windscreen washer. So quickly take you through the controls. Over here, we've got the gear lever, seems quite similar to the Routemaster, so it's a quadrant. We've got first there, but if I lift that up and go further, we're into reverse. We've got second down here, let it pop up into third, and then we've got fourth down there. So I haven't been anywhere near those gears. I've had a trial drive around the yard, but we haven't gone anywhere yet. That's the engine stop. Over here we've got the door controls, the big opening window here. So the visibility is absolutely excellent. We've got a nice useful mirror there as well. We've got the door locked open for a bit more comfort. Over this side, indicators, so left and right, and the only indicators fitted are here on each side of the bus. There are none on the rear, so it's going to be slightly curious. I hope people are paying attention. We've got the dip switch, is this switch here. Horn is a proper PARP. And we've got an old sort of, you know, railway signal style handbrake here. Absolutely massive. And look at the throttle pedal. Designed for your boot to rest, or sandal, to rest right on it. Beautiful Daimler badged pedals as well. And that's the gear select pedal. When you're in neutral, the pedal remains down. Sorry for the knees alert. And that will come higher as I'm working my way through the gears. So manual steering, a very, very big wheel, very, very low geared, so I'll be twirling that plenty once we get underway. Spinning around here, we've got the ignition on at the moment, so that light is actually very gently illuminated. I've got a fog light on the front, side and tail lights and headlights. I don't think we need those today. Up here, the famous bell, so I can be alerted as to what's going on. We may hear that going as we're going along. This would turn the heater on, it doesn't actually work. And then we've got the saloon lights as well. So yeah, quite a lot going on in here. And gauges, we've got a modern temperature gauge. Down there in the middle is vacuum and oil pressure, because it's vacuum brakes, triple servo. A servo for each front wheel and one for the rear brakes. And then an optimistic speed over goes up to 50 miles an hour. Apparently 37 is about all we're likely to see. And that's pushing things a bit, so we'll be gently going today, so I'm glad we're a nice high visibility green. Apparently I've got my flask of tea down there, so that's good to see. So under the bonnet, the classic Gardner 6LW engine, which has two separate blocks, so it's two blocks of 3-cylinder. Gardner did all manner of engines, and they all have the very same sort of sound to them. The Internal Fire Museum near where I live has a 1-cylinder Gardner diesel, and it still has echoes of these larger bus engines. But yeah, look at all the mechanical control on everything. Blimey. So it's rated at 112 brake horsepower. So yeah, gearing will be saving the day today. Right then, let's go for a drive. I've just had a little familiarization run, just going to make sure the mic is connected up. So start button is here. There we go, doesn't that sound magnificent? But of course it's quite loud because the engine is here. There doesn't appear to be any soundproofing, so apparently in the winter it could get, or rather in the summer, it could get very warm in here. Even though this window opens, I've got the door open for ventilation, it can get very hot. This is your heating system in the winter. Those are pipes that go up to the heater. So that would keep you slightly warm, I guess. So we'll go through the motions. I'm really struggling to try and film things in here. I'll try and bring this camera down a bit more to hopefully show you what I'm doing as we go along. So I don't touch that pedal. I'm going to go for first gear, even though probably alright, but I just want to be sure. And when I press the pedal select button, that will get us moving along the way. So come off that, fluid flywheel engages. We'll give a signal to let people know we're coming out. In fact, we're going to have to wait. There's a car coming past. You definitely have to keep your eye on other road users. There we go. Swing out around the taxi. Try not to swing into the trees. And we are underway. I moved the gear selector to second. Nothing happens. We are just primed and ready. Second gear is there for when I need it, but we're going to come to another junction, so I think I'm just going to ease her out as we go. Got a give way here. Make sure there's no one coming out the car park. And I'm going to put a right signal on because we are turning right at this junction. Huge, heavy steering wheel to heave at. And check for traffic both ways. We're clear. And despite the fact I'm doing this, I can go for second gear just by pressing that pedal down. Move the gear selector into third. Another press of the pedal power and we're away. Move that to fourth so it's ready for me. Now I'm in fourth, I'll move it back to third. Thank you very much for waiting. And We are underway, and this feels so different to the Routemaster. It is much harder work because nothing is assisted. So really hard work driving this bus. Oh, clatter over the drains. Open her up a bit. Not that she's got an awful lot more to give. That's 30 miles an hour in 4th gear. It's a bit about all you'd hope for really back in the day. That nice mirror over there to keep an eye on, make sure I'm nice and close to the curb. So yeah, hugely physical. A day of doing this, you'll be exhausted going up and down the gearbox constantly. You're only saving grace being there would have been fewer traffic lights back in the day perhaps. But the engine size is over 8 litres, so it's a big old lump of engine. I can just press the pedal and downshift to 3rd when I'm ready. The light's gone green. Oh, feed the wheel. This is, I know I'm working hard here, but at least, you know, these half-cab days, the driver just had to drive. There's no worrying about what the passengers were up to, that was the conductor's job. So I'm off the clutch pedal, I'm ready to accelerate. The engine is governed to 1700 RPM. So it's a slow revving, I would say. Because we're going right almost immediately. So it's quite the thing, because the gear lever doesn't necessarily react, or it doesn't show the gear you're in, it can be a bit confusing. You have to remember, have I released the pedal yet? So I'm now in 2nd, we're just creeping along with that fluid flywheel, just like the Lanchester. Just pre-select 3rd gear, so that even if I'm turning the wheel, I can change gear, flick it into 4th. A bit quick on top gear there, just started slipping, so I just had to ease off, just to let it ease its way in. So fair play to all those preservationists who keep these old buses in action. Going a bit wide here just to watch some of the branches. We are very, very tall. Constant fight with the steering wheel just to maintain a straight trajectory, but you really have to plan ahead. I can see there's a van parked on our side of the road. I'm already giving it some thought how I'm going to get round it. Very low branch there, I'm just going to try and give some room to. There we go. What an utterly exhausting but utterly fascinating experience. So into second again now. It is getting really warm in here now. The heat soak from the engine is enormous. Okay. So we come to a stop, handbrake on, and then we pop her in neutral and the pedal stays down when we do so. Wow. What an amazing and absolutely exhausting experience. Absolutely lovely. So yeah, let's get out and do a sum up. Oh, let's just knock her off first. Oh, marvellous. There we go, what a fascinating experience. This Daimler CVG6 with Northern Counties bodywork and what's known as the Brummy tin front end. No exposed radiator here, which is why I had to glue the Daimler flutes just onto the front of it. Absolutely fantastic experience. Huge thank you to David for entrusting me with this beautiful bus. It has been through so much, you know, demolishing houses, almost scrapped, but thankfully preserved pretty much as a one-off with this style of body. But yeah, a fascinating experience, but by heck, the bus drivers of old had to work hard for their art. It really shows you just how good the Routemaster is, all the assistances it brought. So while it outwardly fairly similar, this is another world to drive. And then of course came the rear engine buses. Hopefully we can get to play with one of those at some point. They're a different ball game altogether. But thank you very much for watching. Don't forget you can head to the Hubnut store if you would like to buy lovely merchandise, none of which has a bus theme. We must work on that. And we will see you in a future video. Farewell. Number 76.